Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Siletti. This is Entertainment Update, your place for everything movie and TV in the world of entertainment. Once again, hello everyone. Again, my name is Daniel Siletti, and welcome to Entertainment Update. We have got a great show for you. If you've never seen the show, it's basically about how we talk to someone about their career, and then we ask them a few questions about the world of films and TV. And we've got a great guest for you today. We've got one of my favorite actors of all time, personally. He's been in many films and television shows, and he's even part of the space world too. I'd like to please welcome Mr. Robert Picardo. Mr. Picardo, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for asking. Good to be here.
Not a problem.
Or good to be here virtually. I'm not really there. I'm here and you're there, but we're both in our respective years communicating.
Exactly. So let me first ask, how have you been doing during this crazy time that we're in right now?
Well, it's amazing that I haven't gained any weight because I've been cooking a lot. I've learned a really spectacular new bread recipe from my pal Bill Nye the Science Guy. Yep. Very sciencey artisan bread loaf that's delicious. So I'm cooking a lot. And I started a YouTube channel, which I encourage your listeners to check out. You can go to my Instagram, Robert_Picardo, and click on the link in the bio. And I do at least one new video every week on various topics. Often I'm acting with myself, playing two characters. So it's helped keep me sane. And I also went down to LA recently to work on 2 different television shows with very strong COVID restrictions. I think I was tested a total of 6 times over the course of 12 days or something like that, and came up clean every time. So I'm happy to be back in Northern Cal, shuddering myself again and waiting for the next opportunity to act in front of a camera.
Well, perfect. So, and that actually leads into my first question, and that is, you're known as this big actor. So how did you get started? What made you want to become an actor?
Well, I guess in 9th grade and the beginning of high school, a friend of mine, a classmate who was kind of the class clown. I sort of grew into being a class clown, but I wasn't in 9th grade. He pushed me into being in a play with him, and I liked it. I liked getting my own laughs, even though I think he was thinking I would just set up his laughs. And then I continued to act in larger roles throughout high school. And when I went off to college with the ambition of becoming a doctor, I'd always loved biology. Took advanced biology in high school. Enrolled in Yale University with the intention of being a biology major. Declared myself a biology major, and then continued to act for fun on the side. And then I was in a production at Yale that kind of turned my head around, a quasi-professional production of Leonard Bernstein's Mass, which is a giant kind of multifaceted piece for a full symphony orchestra and a group of actors and dancers and singers, and with a full chorus and a rock and roll band. I mean, it's a mishmash of everything. And I had a featured role in that. Leonard Bernstein came to see it, was very taken with my performance, took our production to Europe to premiere the work. So at 19, I was in a kind of my work suddenly from a college production was being seen internationally. It was videotaped for PBS, for what they used to call Theater in America, and I guess now it's Great Performances. And then Leonard Bernstein basically said, "What are you going to do with your life?" And I said, "I'm pre-med." And he said, "I'm surprised to hear that. I think, you have natural energy on stage. I'd think you'd want to be an actor." And I said, "Would you tell my mother that?" And he did, opening night, and that helped get me out of pre-med and into theater. So from that point on, there was no looking back. I graduated Yale at 20. By 23, I had my first leading role on Broadway. By 24, I had my second leading role on Broadway, playing opposite Jack Lemmon in a father-son comedy drama. And that play took me to Los Angeles. I recreated my role opposite Jack Lemmon out there at age 25, I guess, or about to turn 25, something like that. And then I started to work in film and television. And so I've been very fortunate to work consistently as an actor all these many years, and I still love what I do, so I feel grateful for that.
Well, that's fantastic. And here you are today. And it's, a lot of people have seen you in many, many projects, and some of my favorites, we've seen you in stuff things as the Burbs, Oh God, You Devil, Hail Caesar, Legend, and even I love the little bit you did even in Looney Tunes Back in Action. That always cracked me up as a kid. And then you've done also many TV roles, which is where I love some of your projects on TV. And the three of them that point out to me are China Beach, The Wonder Years, and of course Star Trek Voyager. So can you tell me about some of those three projects?
Sure. I think China Beach and The Wonder Years were both pilots the same television season. I auditioned for The Wonder Years first, and they liked me a lot. And first, I auditioned for the father character, and I was a little too young to play that at the time. I was only, I think, 30, maybe 34. And I think Dan Laurie was probably 40-ish. Then I auditioned for the gym teacher. They liked me for that. Then they auditioned me for the voiceover that Daniel Stern eventually got, which was the plum role to get, I have to tell you. And then they had me back in as the gym teacher and decided to hire me for that, for Coach Cutlip. I think they originally wanted a very kind of big, powerful-looking guy, but they liked my sort of skinny, neurotic take on the character, right. like a guy who just wasn't all that bright and thought he was going to teach, English, but when he was hired by the school, he was given remedial reading and gym. And was a little, paranoid about that. Meanwhile, after having done the pilot of The Wonder Years, I was cast on China Beach, which was quite dramatic, and a leading man role. I remember auditioning as I was with thinning hair, but the studio, when they hired me, their edict was to put a hairpiece on me so that I could be a long-term sort of quasi-love interest for Dana Delaney. And back then, you had to have hair as a young actor to get kissed by a beautiful woman on television. Thank God Patrick Stewart changed all that shortly after. So I was I was in both shows, playing a character actor in one, a character lead in one, or a supporting role, the gym teacher, and a leading man in the other. They were both on ABC, and when they both got picked up, the head of ABC called the China Beach producer and said, "We hope you will cooperate with The Wonder Years. We like all of our ABC shows to cooperate with each other." So I was sort of given special permission to do both shows. While I was playing a lead on China Beach, I would recur the first 3 seasons of The Wonder Years until Fred Savage's character graduated from middle school and went to high school and got a new gym teacher. Right. So that was a great time in my career. I was very busy. I even shot one season. I shot Gremlins 2 on the Warner Brothers lot where we shot China Beach. So there was one 24-hour period where I was on all 3 sets in the same day. The Wonder Years, China Beach, and Gremlins 2. So I felt pretty busy.
Yeah.
And China Beach was a particularly wonderful credit to have. The show was very, what's the word? Just very intense to work on. One of our co-creators, Bill Broyles, had served in Vietnam and written a famous book about Vietnam. And he really wanted to get it right and hoped that in some small way, China Beach would address the wounds, the open wounds from that were still around from that war, maybe create some conversation and help right some of the wrongs. The Vietnam War is the first time that those who served came back to a very divided country and were not thanked as they should have been for their service. They did not get the thanks of a grateful nation that they are due for having served. They were often, the public often blamed them rather than the policymakers for that unpopular war, and that's a terrible, terrible miscarriage of American, what's the word, of our ideology to to thank and support those who serve to protect us, even in an unpopular war. So that was so I think China Beach, I've heard from many people over the years that kids, if their parents, if they had a family member, a father or an uncle or even an older brother who had served in Vietnam, that when China Beach came along, it helped create some conversation about the war and maybe even generated a little bit of healing in some families, which makes me very proud. I love my character on the show. He had a certain amount of humor, gallows humor, and I love. I had a great relationship with Dana Delaney's character. We really were sort of unrequited lovers. That the producer described to me. He said, "You two are never more intimate than when you're working together. She knows what you need. She knows what you're about to ask for. You guys are like a single unit when you're under pressure and doing emergency surgery and all that." And that was a great, and also we're under the most intense circumstances of our lives and never more necessary than we are at that moment in our lives. So it was a pleasure to work on, and I felt very lucky. Meanwhile, sometimes I would go off and do the Wonder Years, and I remember one particular day where I was doing an episode of the Wonder Years for which I got an Emmy nomination called Lose Ears, a pun on Hoosiers, which was a popular movie about basketball. And in the basic theme of the episode was that the way kids choose sides in middle school is not fair. All of the, it's humiliating to the non-athletes in the class that all the good athletes get picked first and nobody wants the losers, so to speak. And in order to stand up against that, Fred Savage character, Kevin, picks all of the worst players on his team. That's right. As sort of a protest. And in that episode, there's a wonderful slow motion moment where they toss a basketball up in the air and everybody looks up like it's going to go through the hoop and win the game, but instead it just hits the unpopular coach in the head while he's eating jelly beans and he starts to choke to death. Very funny moment. Very. And of course, I was shooting that while I was preparing for the most emotional China Beach episode I had to shoot the very next morning. So I would go off, sneak into a side room at the gymnasium we were shooting in, and I would work on the China Beach lines and work on the emotional material and start to cry, and then I'd wipe my eyes and I'd walk back into the gym and get hit in the head with a basketball over and over again. It really led me to believe that, we do whatever is required for the various roles that we get in life. And sometimes the juxtaposition of those vicarious lives that we lead as actors really kind of bump up into each other in a silly way. And
then after those shows you were also on other episodes of other shows. I remember you were on a couple episodes of Home Improvement. You were on Frasier, Smallville, Orville, all that fun stuff. And then of course you have your one of your most memorable roles on Star Trek Voyager, and that's a good also transition from science fiction to science fact with the Planetary Society. So tell us about Voyager and the Society.
All right. Well, I at the time that the Star Trek Voyager audition came along, I was working at a theater I'd always wanted to work at in LA, the Mark Taper Forum, a very prestigious theater at the Music Center in downtown LA. And I was about to open a show playing, believe it or not, a doctor with a terrible bedside manner. Turned out that was a great warm-up for what was about to be, probably the most major turn in my career, but I didn't know that yet. The show was about to open. It had quite a difficult, tech day where we were rehearsing for 12 hours. And my agent said, "You have an audition for this new Star Trek series." And I said, I'm working all day. And he said, "You got a long lunch break, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Go over." I said, "But I'm doing a job now. I'm not available to shoot a pilot right away." And he said, "Don't tell them." So I went over, and first of all, I thought, I don't have time to even read this whole pilot script. I'm going to kind of skim it. And the part of this that they wanted me to read for this doctor was described as colorless, humorless, a computer program of a doctor. And I thought, what? A hologram? How can he be a hologram? How do you hold a medical instrument if you're a projection of light? I didn't get anything about it. And it sounded really boring, like he was a machine. And I said, I don't really want to do this. So I spoke to a friend of mine, an actress who'd been in China Beach named Megan Gallagher. She was reading for Janeway and said, "Oh, the script is great. You have to read for it." She said, "Why don't you look at this other funny character who's an alien called Neelix?" And I'm thinking, little rubber ears like Spock, right? So I turned down the audition for the doctor and I asked to read for Neelix. And I read very successfully, so much so that they want to test me for the part. And I'm afraid I don't know anything about the makeup. And, I had some really intense in my early career, heavy makeup experiences in projects that I'm glad I worked on, but I had gotten a little claustrophobic from the last one, and I didn't want to be buried alive in makeup on a regular basis. So I was a little trepidatious about it because they don't tell you when you audition for a Star Trek series how much the makeup, they don't want to scare the actors away. So your agent will call and say, "My client wants to know how long you'll be in the makeup chair." And they go, "We'll get back to you." And then they call back and they go, more than 15 minutes. And that's right. 3.5 hours a day is more than 15 minutes.
Yes, it is.
It's also more than 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't get Neelix, didn't get it. And, at that point I had read the whole script and I liked the script. And they called back, to their credit, the producers called back to my agent. This is very unusual in television. Usually once you've tested for something, you're like a used Kleenex. You're discarded. But they called back and said, "There's something about his voice that we like for this role." I don't know if they said my voice or something about him. "Would he consider coming in for the other role?" And I said to my agent, "I don't get the joke, but I'll try." And then I went in and I read, and I knew they wanted somebody funny because I'd heard they'd auditioned 900 actors, I heard. They wanted someone to make them laugh. And I said, there are only 8 or 9 lines. There's nothing really funny here. So I ad-libbed a line at the end of my audition. I ended up channeling DeForest Kelley, I suppose, without realizing it. After the last scripted line where I say the doctor's program has been left running in sickbay with no one remembered to turn him off. So I say, "I believe someone has failed to terminate my program," is the last line of the scene. But after that, I took a long deadpan look at all the people watching the audition, and I said, "I'm a doctor, not a nightlight." And I got a huge laugh, and they hired me that day. And and it's really, I'm convinced it's because I did that ad lib, because they wanted to know that they wanted someone funny in the role. Furthermore, I think what also, in retrospect, I think what helped me is that when my face is at rest, I can look a little intimidating or a little even angry. My children, now that they're grown up, they say, "Oh yeah, Dad, you have resting bitch face. If you don't smile, you look unhappy or mean." And I think that helped me in the doctor role because I didn't smile at all the first 2 years. I think I did the character. He looked, I got to start with zero emotional affect and, personality affect, and then build a personality over the course of 7 years. And I'm glad that I started with that kind of blandness and artifice too. I also stood with an artificially, extended posture, and I spoke as if I were listening to the sound of my own voice. I would, I purposely did things that had a certain amount of artifice to them, so that as I became more human, it was demonstrated not just in the way I sounded, but the way I smiled, and the way my palette of behavior just became broader and broader. And so that all served me well, even though I really faked my way through the pilot. I didn't get Star Trek very well. I watched a bunch of episodes that the producers sent me, and I went, oh, this is really good storytelling. This is the Next Generation they sent me. Because I didn't remember much about the original series, but I know it looked a little silly to me, like a bunch of people sitting around in ski pajamas, and on phony-looking sets or silly, phony-looking planets. So I was not in love with it. It really took watching Next Generation to go, man, these stories are really good. This writing is really good. Now I'm starting to get why people like it. So I have always had to confess to Star Trek fans when they asked me if I went into the experience being a fan. And I thought, the first time I was asked, I thought I could lie now and then I have to lie for the rest of my life, or I could tell the truth. And I told the truth. That I didn't really know much about it. As a kid, the original series was on when I was about, 14 years old, 12 years old, something like that, 1968, I would have been just 15. But I was busy watching, Lost in Space rather than Star Trek. I don't know why. Probably because I thought Angela Cartwright was all that at the time. And Star Trek, as it does with all of the actors that are on it, because of its popularity around the world and because it's kind of an evergreen product, even though they make new shows, the new fans go back and they sort of review all of Star Trek once they've been brought into the fold. So unlike other television series, people continue to rewatch it. And I'll meet fans back in the day when we were allowed to leave the house before the COVID-19 pandemic and go all over the world to various kinds of conventions. I often meet a fan who's 12, 14 years old, not even born when we went off the air, and they will say to me that they've just completed watching all 7 seasons, and it's very fresh in their minds and in their hearts, and you're as big a celebrity to them, even though you finished shooting the show almost 20 years ago, as if you were still doing it, because it's very present in their mind. So it's nice to have a signature role as an actor. It's nice to be part of a franchise that really appeals to people's better instincts, their better angels, the spirit of science and exploration for its own sake, and for a world in the future where people work together in harmony, people of different races and species and backgrounds work harmoniously, and where technology enables and empowers man rather than destroys him. So there's a lot of nice things about the Star Trek core values that I'm happy to be in a show like that, where families sit down, multiple generations of a family will sit down, a grandparent, a father, and a kid will all sit together and watch the show, which is unusual with a lot of forms of entertainment. So I get that it's a good thing, and I'm proud of my longtime association now with the Star Trek saga.
Absolutely, and you also got to play other parts in Star Trek. You got to play the person the program was based on, and you're continuing to do that, which is great to see. like I said, you shifted from science fiction to science fact with the Planetary Society, which is a program and a society formed by Carl Sagan. So tell us about your relationship with that.
All right, thank you for asking. This is the 40th anniversary of the Planetary Society, which is the world's leading space advocacy group. We have membership from around the world, and it's really the purpose of the society is to give their members a feeling that they have a voice in the future of space exploration. What that means, for example, here in our country, we will often sign petitions and send them to our members of Congress, encouraging them to not only support, increased funding for NASA, but specific programs, a specific mission that might be in danger of cancellation or postponement, and just to show that it's important to their constituents, to Americans. They see the value of the future of not just robotic exploration of space, but a return to human exploration of space. It's pretty much decided now that we will return to the moon first as a stepping stone to Mars. There was a great debate a few years ago about whether we should go back to the moon first or just set our sights on Mars, but now it pretty much decided that we'll be going back to the moon, perhaps landing a woman as early as 2013. That's what has been announced.
Great.
Or an orbit, perhaps an orbit around the moon 2013 and landing 2014. I mean, it's all theoretical, but it's certainly gearing up. And we have competing, we have the Space Launch System, and we also have the SpaceX Falcon Heavy. So we've got even, competing rockets to take us there. It's, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Back when I was on Voyager in its first run in the late 90s, I got a phone call to be part of a fundraiser for the Planetary Society. I didn't know much about it then, even though it had been founded in 1980. It was in honor of Ray Bradbury's 70th birthday, I believe it was. We were going to do readings from his classic work with quite an impressive list of people reading: Charlton Heston, John Rhys Davies, and then a bunch of my Star Trek colleagues, John Delancey, Tim Russ. And it was a wonderful evening, and I got to meet an idol, Ray Bradbury, and they reached out to me. There was something about me that they liked, the organization, and they asked if I would be on their advisory council. And I said, well, I'm not a scientist. I love science. I have a childhood love of it, but my science education ended at Yale, when I was 20 years old. And they said, basically, they made it clear that I could bring their message to the science fiction fan community to say, hey, if you love science fiction, you really love science. Let me help you realize that. And so I did their outreach in the late 90s and early 2000s on various educational challenges for young people in middle school and high school. One of the early ones was very shortly after we landed the first rover, the Sojourner rover in 98.
Yeah.
We had a program, the Planetary Society had a strategic partnership with the Lego Corporation, and kids could build their own Mars rover out of Lego toys. I mean, with actual, electronics in it that would move around. So your high school would build a rover, and then you would build your own Martian surface, like a giant sandbox with obstacles and rocks and topography. And then you would send your rover to one high school, they would send their rover to your high school, and you would explore the unknown Martian surface of the other high school with your rover and send back the data and try to map it, via the internet, using the internet as kind of an analog for sending the data back from the Martian surface all the way to Earth. So it was really a perfect analogy for what was being done at that moment in time, and kids in high school could do it and sort of learn it from the inside with this incredible, modeling opportunity. Now, and there were other projects that the Planetary Society either originated or partnered on, something called the Mars Millennium Project. I got the first public service announcement, I believe, ever shot on a Star Trek set during Voyager for the Mars Millennium Project. Years later, I got a letter through the Planetary Society from a young woman who saw that public service announcement at age 14, and it changed her life. She went on to win that competition, and she became an astrophysicist.
Oh my God.
And that's pretty cool that you can use a television show to help inspire people in a very real career in science and technology. So, and eventually, after years of service on the advisory council, I was asked to join the executive board, which I'm very proud to be on. We're presently led by Bill Nye, the science guy, and he's been our leader for 10 years. And it's just an amazing group of people. So I encourage your listeners to check out www.planetary.org and see what we're doing. There's a whole bunch of videos that I hosted called the Planetary Post about various topics in space science and exploration. And I continue, as I said, I continue to be very involved and very committed to their work.
That's excellent. And, we're running out of time here, so I want to wrap this up here and actually get to the title of the show here, an entertainment update, that when I was researching it, I actually found there's a slight connection to you. And that is, there's an update recently that is in the television world, and that is they have revived a game show recently called The Weakest Link. And
with the wonderful Jane Lynch, yes.
That's correct. And you were on a Star Trek special of it way back in the early 2000s. And, that, unfortunately, the American version did get canceled. And they just recently revived it. I think yesterday was the first episode. So I want to just get your quick opinion on, do you think that's a good idea to revive that type of game show? And is it a little bit of nostalgic, you think? Or was it maybe just another game show?
Well, why would it be another? Yeah, I don't see how it could be a bad thing. First of all, Jane Lynch is a terrific actress and has a great kind of comic. She's a great comedian, in addition to being a great actress. So I'm sure she'll be terrific as the host. She has that sort of droll, intimidating affect, which I think is important. And so I think it's a great. I didn't see their first episode, but I've seen some of the promos, and I think it's a perfectly good show to revive. I loved that night. I came one vowel away from winning $100,000 for the Planetary. I'm sorry, for the Pediatric AIDS Foundation, which was the charity early on in my Star Trek career. I did quite a bit of fundraising for them, and I still strongly support them. But I lost. I blurted out the answer was Emperor Hirohito, and I said Hirohoto. I got one vowel wrong, and I lost to LeVar Burton. Which I remember the British host, saying to me, "You should have won. You should have won. You spoke too quickly." So I was a little disappointed, but it was all good fun, and I'd certainly like to be on again. Maybe they'll do another All Star Trek, one, and we'll see what happens. But I don't know that I'll do as well as I did last time. I don't know that my brain works quite as quickly as it did 20 years ago, but I'm delighted to find out.
Right. Well, it has been so much fun. Two more highlights I just want to quickly mention are, you do also have a singing career. I know my mother actually has one of your albums, and you are fantastic. I really want to compliment you on that. And you and I, believe it or not, have a very small connection to each other. You are, of course, from the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, and I actually grew up the town right across the bridge in New Jersey, Mount Laurel, believe it or not. So we were very close to each other.
Just a bridge too far.
Just a bridge too far, exactly. And I've seen you at a couple of conventions, and you've just been wonderful. And it's been wonderful to have you here, and I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been a pleasure. I wish you good luck with your program. All right?
Thank you so much. And I hope to even interview people from your shows and films someday soon.
I hope so, too.
I hope so, too. Here. Well, thank you all for listening and watching. My name is Dan Siletti. This has been Robert Picardo with me, and this all has been Entertainment Update. That is a wrap.
EMH out.